Hello, Sooner Nation, OU Insider subscribers, Coach Brian Clinton, enthusiasts, people who are sad because college football is done, or at least on the field, it's done until August and September. I think both Brian and I would fall into that category. My name is Jesse Crittenden. This is another installment of the Oklahoma Drill, a podcast fueled by OU Insider and the Rivals Network. I am joined, as always, in perpetuity till the end of time, by my co-host, Sir Coach Esquire Junior the Third, Brian Clinton. See, I put all that stuff at the beginning instead of some of them at the end. I'm mixing them up. Always keeping you on your toes, Brian. It's cold. It's getting cold outside.
It is
real cold.
Yeah, it's cold, and it's really not even in comparison to what it's going to be next week. It's quite mild right now. So, yeah, it's going to be nuts. Those negative. Anytime they have that little dash next to the numbers, I keep myself inside. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, and it's going to be cold for me regardless because I'm going to Lawrence, Kansas this weekend for OU Kansas hoops. And I don't know if you've heard about Lawrence, Kansas. I know you've been there, so you've heard. It gets cold there, and this weekend on Saturday, it's going to be a low of -5, high of 9 degrees.
Oh, that's nice. Balmy.
So it's just, that's give me a beach somewhere in Lawrence, Kansas.
That was probably the weather the last time we were up there is probably one of the most notable things. I mean, standing out there, I know you don't know about it because you were in the press box, but it was raining, it was cold, it was windy, and the team that we cover lost. So it was a great trip, lots of fun. Hope this one goes better. I like how the basketball team's playing going into that game. So,
well, and by the time this comes out, OU we will know what happens with OU TCU, which is tonight. We're recording this Wednesday afternoon. It's tonight, and I actually think that's going to be, if OU wins tonight, then I think that's going to make the stage even bigger this weekend. But regardless, it's going to be a top 10 matchup. It's going to be huge. But we're not talking about basketball today, Brian. We are talking about football, OU football specifically. And the reason why we're talking about OU football is, for one, we always talk about OU football, but two, some stuff has happened since the last time we spoke. OU has a new defensive coordinator, not officially. As of right now, it is not official. Ted Roof and the University of Oklahoma have agreed to mutually part ways, which don't think was surprising given that Ted Roof's been in the business a lot, or he's been in the business a long time. He's been at over 15 Power 5 programs. It's pretty common for him to stay a year or two and look elsewhere. The subject of his retirement came up during the Alamo Bowl press conferences. But Brian, I think that was a week ago. I think that was last Wednesday. Was it, or was it Wednesday or Thursday?
I believe it was Thursday.
You're right. It was Thursday. It was last Thursday. And by the time we were still trying to wrap our heads around something that was still pretty surprising that it happened when it happened. News breaks that OU is going to hire Zach Alley out of Jacksonville State, guy with ties to Brent Venables. Obviously, he was a student assistant and a GA at Clemson for a total of 8 years. He's been at Jacksonville State the last 2 years. So in the span of like 6 hours, OU let go of one defensive coordinator and hired another. But again, it is important to note that as we record this, that is not official. His hire is not official now. Fans don't need to worry too much. I think he's already been in contact with some of the players on the roster. And I think some of this is because they've still got to figure out contract stuff. Obviously, Zach Alley is still at Jacksonville State, or he's still hired by Jacksonville State. Ted Roof's contract was supposed to run through early 2025. So he's technically still on a contract. So I think there's things that they're trying to figure out. But OU Board of Regents meeting is Thursday. So that should be interesting to see if we find out any more then. But until then, Brian, that's a lot of we haven't even talked about all the transfer portal stuff for you when it comes to before we get to Zach Alley. What was maybe your reaction to Ted Roof and OU mutually parting ways, and Ted Roof's tenure as OU's defensive coordinator being up after 2 years? What was your reaction and analysis of that news?
Well, that was kind of it was expected that he wasn't going to be a long-term he wasn't going to be the long-term option for Oklahoma at defensive coordinator. That was pretty apparent. I think that the one thing that always stood out about his time here is whenever Brent Venables spoke about Roof, to media, whether it was during the week or after games, whatever it was, something that almost always came up was his value as an educator, as a teacher. And I think that if you take a step back and look at this from a 10,000-foot view, it makes a lot of sense. Ted Roof's in his 60s. This is a guy that is, not that he's not a good recruiter at all. That's not what I'm saying, but it maybe isn't in his wheelhouse to connect with kids nowadays. Maybe like it would have been, 20 something years ago. But I think that this is a perfect example of Oklahoma again getting younger and a little more vibrant on the coaching staff. So one of the things that I think you say is he filled his role here. He fulfilled the job that he was here to do, and that was to help Brent install the foundation of what will be Oklahoma's defense moving forward. I think that it's very important to note that, obviously things were very amicable between he and Oklahoma as he left. There wasn't any hard feelings. It was, hey, if you want to stay on uh, as an analyst and do that here, you can. But obviously he felt that he wanted to go and coach somewhere. He still had that in him. So I think it's, you look at it as, for the 2 years that we have, it's still, that's really a short window to really gauge somebody's job that they've done as a defensive coordinator. But I would say, knowing that Brent Venables is truly who calls the games and who is kind of running things there on that side of the ball, it was exactly what he needed to do here. He filled that role, like I said. And now you turn to Zach Alley, who is a younger version of Brent Venables, and we'll get into that more in a second. But I think Ted Roof helped Oklahoma get to where it is heading, I guess, defensively. They're right on track with the other times that we've seen Brent Venables' defense going into year 3 whenever they truly become an elite unit over the last 2 tenures. Oklahoma seems to be right on track with that, bringing back a lot of veteran guys and looks good there. So I would say overall it was a successful tenure for him here. He did exactly what he was supposed to do, and now you just kind of wish him the best of luck and see what he does somewhere else.
I think this is an important discussion to have when it comes to, because I think there was a lot that came out over Ted Roof's 2-year tenure. It's like, well, what is he actually doing? What are his responsibilities? And it is interesting because look, Ted Roof absolutely was involved defensively. He called plays a lot of the time. Now, I think Brent Venables played a bigger role this year in 2023 than he did in 2022 in terms of not only game planning day to day, but also play calling. But Ted Roof handled a lot of that. So, it's not like he was a bystander. It's right. Brent Venables' defense, but Ted Roof handled a lot. But this was always interesting because even in practices, when we would get to go out to open practices, it was just always interesting to see, in individual drills that, Ted Roof was also the linebackers coach, and with the linebackers, there's Ted Roof, but who was always also with the linebackers is Brent Venables and also James Skalski. Really playing. In a lot of ways, it was Brent and Skalski leading those linebacker drills. I think in some ways it was kind of a not a weird fit, but it was this like, okay, I think Brent's trying to figure out how involved do I need to be defensively? How much does my energy need to be placed elsewhere? But I do think Brent in some ways couldn't really help himself. That's what he knows. He knows to coach linebackers and the defense. And also like you mentioned, Ted Roof's a little bit of an older guy. And to me, what this signals is, or what hiring Zach Alley signals to me is bringing in somebody that he has even more familiarity with than Ted Roof.
Yeah.
Somebody that has had success the last 2 years calling a defense. And to me, this is a signal of Brent wanting to be a little bit more hands off when it comes to the defense. I think it's pretty clear to me that the last 2 years that while Brent has done a lot of good, he's done a lot of good.
Mm-hmm.
I think he wants to put his energy more into being an overall head coach, more and more game management. Less involved in not less involved, but
no,
I think he's looking.
Yeah.
I think he's looking for someone to come in and basically take the reins. And I don't think, even though Ted Roof was involved, I don't think Ted Roof. This was never Ted Roof's defense. This was never his hands fully on the wheel. And while this is all still going to exist under the umbrella of Brent Venables and his scheme, I think he's looking to hand the reins off to somebody who's a little bit younger, who has a little bit more energy and can really grab a hold of this thing. That's the impression I get, at least.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's really interesting too that, as you pointed out earlier, 6 hours. Like it was 6 hours between us finding out that Ted Roof was gone, and then Oklahoma had pinpointed Alley as their replacement. So with how Brent Venables does everything, even looking back at the offensive coordinator hire and elevating Seth Luttrell, he went through his processes. He made sure and to do things by the book. This tells me this was premeditated.
That's a good point.
And I think that you also have to understand that the argument about him being, he's 29 or 30 and he's coming from Jacksonville State, none of that stuff is relevant. None of that stuff is relevant. This is a guy that spent 7 years under Brent Venables, mirrored himself after this guy. Absolutely is a spitting image of him. I mean, he even sounds like him, his mannerisms. It's wild. And he had a get back coach on the sidelines at Jacksonville State. Like, this is somebody that is, he's an extension of Venables. And I love the hire, because this is, you nailed it. This is a sign that Venables is looking to become more of that CEO type of coach, which he spent a lot of time under CEO style head coaches in his career as a coordinator. I mean, look back at Bob Stoops, who was one of the best doing it. Dabo Swinney was one of the best here recently doing that. And then going back to Bill Snyder, who, I can see him right now with his arms folded on the sidelines, just letting everybody else do their jobs. That's and I think that, it's going to be an interesting dynamic, because I don't know that Brent Venables is ever going to actually be able to be fully hands off. I don't think that's within him.
I don't know if you want him to do that.
Right. And I think if he ever got to that point, he would not be as he wouldn't be as instrumental as he is, or he wouldn't be as big of a role as he has his entire career. That's just part of who he is. And so I think adding another guy there is with that style of coaching is important. It's really going to be a fun thing as well, because the dynamic there, having an older version, obviously, of himself, it's going to be really interesting to see how things fit, because this is someone who is going to bring in his own twists and turns on the style and on the aggressiveness and what they want to do. And I'm not exactly sure that Venables is going to be ready to hand the reins over to him year one. I still think that we're going to see, as Oklahoma transitions into the SEC, he's probably still going to have hands on a lot of things that he does. But depending on how things go and how quickly Allie picks up the things that Brent wants him to do, I do think that eventually you will see this become Zach Alley's defense. and Brent Venables' team rather than it being Brent Venables' defense.
Cheers to the new year from our friends at Manscaped, because your resolutions shouldn't be the only things that are well kept. 2024 is the time for new heights, new opportunities, and a new look for your Times Square balls. Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is every man's cheat code to look good, feel good, and turn the page on confidence this year. Whether you're looking to maintain a trim or go for that clean shaven look, this trimmer has you covered. Trusted by over 10 million men worldwide, now is your time to get a grip on your grooming with our exclusive offer. Go to manscaped.com and use code OUinsider for 20% off plus free shipping. Happy New Year or Happy New Balls. Equipped with 2 skin-safe blade heads, a standard one for taking a little off the top, and a new foil blade to go smooth wherever your heart desires, the Manscaped Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is like having a personal stylist at your fingertips. Or, well, wherever you need it. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code OUinsider at manscaped.com, because nothing says Happy New Year like a deal that leaves your balls and your budget feeling refreshed. Embrace a new you and definitely embrace a new trimmer, courtesy of Manscaped. No, I agree. And I think that's an important point, because to me it's while Ted Roof and Brent Venables had a prior connection before OU, not only is Zach Alley kind of the spitting image of Brent Venables, but he embraces that. He's very public. He's about that. And I think if you're Brent, like you mentioned, I like what you said about it being premeditated. If you're Brent, I think it makes sense to bring in somebody that is basically just going to be an extension of you.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a confidence there, because it's not only just that schematically they're very similar, philosophically they're similar, but also day to day, how to run practices, how to run drills, they're very similar. And I don't want to spoil this yet, because the hire isn't official, and there's a story Parker and I have written before, or once it becomes official. But I talked to a very prominent coach who has history with Zach Alley, who basically said the biggest compliment you can give Zach Alley is Brent Venables has spent more time with him than anybody. And I think it's pretty clear what Brent Venables wants to do here. And I also think you're right. I think heading into the SEC, it would be a lot to put everything on Zach. And I don't think that's what's going to happen. But I do think I think heading into the SEC, Brent realizes he does need to be more of a CEO coach.
Yeah.
I will also say that I don't understand the age thing. I don't understand because like this always comes back to, not to get on a soapbox, I'm going to try my best not to do that. But how does a person get experience? Someone gets them a job when they don't have experience. That's how people get experience.
Right.
And not that he has no experience, but like everybody has to, or like everybody that coaches Division I football, Power 5 football, they had to do their first job as a prominent coach in Power 5.
Right.
Like you're not just born with 10 years of Power 5 experience.
Right.
At some point, someone has to kind of take a chance on you.
Yeah.
I can even think of a certain head coach that came before Brent Venables at OU that
exactly
did not come from a Power 5 program. And look, for all the warts and all of Lincoln Riley's tenure, you can't deny he came to a Power 5 program and immediately had success and immediately established himself as a top offensive mind. I'm not saying there's not a value to being older and having more experience. I'm not saying that, but like it's the same thing in the regular workforce. Like a frustration would be if you're just out of college, right?
Yep.
Someone has to give you experience to get experience. It doesn't make sense to be a young adult and not have experience and someone require you to have experience when you haven't even had time to get that experience yet. Sorry, I'm trying not to rant.
No,
this is not that big of a deal, but for some reason it bothers me.
No, and you brought up a point that I want to kind of hammer home, whether or not you meant to. Whenever you said that Brent saw him as an extension of himself, and there's value in that, I think it's important to note that with those same thought processes, whenever it comes to practice schedule, philosophy, all of those things, the fact that Alley embraces this is another addition. It's another plus for me, because whenever Brent saw him or knows that he is proud of the fact that that's who he is mirroring, you don't have to wonder if this is going to be a clashing philosophies,
Mhm.
or you're not going to have to I mean, and that's something else that I think guys or fans really get wrapped up in. Well, this isn't Tony Gibson. This isn't, who's the guy from Manny Diaz.
Oh yeah.
God, that's bothering me now. Wisconsin's former defensive, Jim Leonard.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Leonard. It's not a big name. Well, guys, those you're talking about bringing somebody into the room that's gonna butt heads with the head coach because they have two differing philosophies. That stuff doesn't work. That's not how college football works. You can't just go and take the best guy regardless of scheme and bring him in and have success. It doesn't work that way. This hire is as close to perfect as I think you can get for a defensive coordinator position under Brent Venables. I don't think it gets any better than that. So, and I agree with you. Yeah, I can't tell you how many jobs out of college that I would apply to where part of their asking was 6 years experience. And I'm like, guys, I just graduated college. Like, I worked at Planet Fitness before this, so I don't like. What do you want me to do? Yeah, but anyways, I won't get
I
you
g-
back on the song.
no, I look, I got lucky. I have this job now. I work for OU Insider, fortunately, very blessed. And a big reason why is because I was covering OU for the Norman Transcript as the sports editor at the newspaper. And I was hired as the sports editor of one of the oldest newspapers in the country at 25 years old when I had no, I mean, the closest thing, I was the sports editor of my college paper for like 9 months. But the publisher gave me a chance. He saw I worked hard and kind of took a gamble when most people who are a sports editor at a newspaper like that usually have been in the business 10, 15, 20 years. They've done it at a smaller paper
Right,
before, right? And I had to learn, absolutely had to learn. I made mistakes, absolutely. It was, but I think there's also some stuff that you can only learn by
right,
doing it and making mistakes. I will also say that I think, for one, you see the progress that Jacksonville State has made the last couple of years under Zach Alley. I mean, even this year, I mean, going 9-4, beating Louisiana in the bowl game. I mean, they're ranked 33rd in scoring defense, 43rd in total defense, 15th in rushing defense. Their advanced statistics were really good, like, EPA and a bunch of other stuff I don't remember off the top of my head, but a lot of those stats are really good. But to me, this is just consistent. If nothing else, this is just consistent with how Brent Venables has run this program, which is culture and, um, chemistry and connection and family and all
yeah,
those buzzwords. But it's just, he has a very, he has a big relation, or a previous big relationship with Zach Alley. They've spent
right.
a ton of time together.
Well, and Zach Alley's also been around Todd Bates, and he's been
Yep.
around Miguel Chavis too. So
Yep.
this is he's building that family unit that you talk about, that you said. So it doesn't. It goes right in line with symmetry, having symmetry with the offensive staff. Whenever Jeff Lebby left, this is the same. It's the same thing. You have guys that are familiar with one another, and I think that's extremely valuable, especially considering where OU's headed.
It is, but again, this is all a little. It's not weird. It's too strong of a word, but it is. I mean, look, the news broke almost a week ago. It hasn't been officially announced. Now, again, like I've said, I don't think there's any real reason to be concerned about that. I think there's still things that they're trying to figure out. And like I said, if you are curious about any of this, I would, head over to ouinsider.com tomorrow. I'll have information from the Board of Regents meeting, but you can also look that stuff up online. They will post the agenda probably sometime Wednesday night or early Thursday. But unless some bombshell, unless something way out of left field, unless something that can't be foreseen comes and shakes this up, Zach Alley is going to be the next defensive coordinator. And the last thing I'll say is I think another big part of this is recruiting. I think getting him more involved in recruiting. I don't think Ted Roof played a super big role in recruiting at OU. I think that's maybe the most exciting thing, is getting a younger guy in here with some energy to maybe play a bigger role
Yeah.
in recruiting. I think that's a positive
Definitely, yeah, and a guy
too.
that's prominent in the Southeast. That's, I mean,
Yeah.
somebody that's been there and recruited that. So, yep, absolutely.
Well, the other thing, Brian, again, and there's plenty of other things. I mean, I think the next couple of weeks are going to be eventful. But I wanted to take a second just to look at what OU's done in the transfer portal. Obviously, the window closed a few days ago, but there is still some stuff trickling in because people who have late bowl games and other extenuating circumstances are able to enter the portal a little bit later, even after the window closes. But for the most part, OU is not done. Let's say that OU is not done in the transfer portal. There are still a couple of moves that could be made. But as of right now, OU has landed, I believe, 9 players in the portal, technically 10. It depends on if it depends, or well it's, I think it's, is that right, 9 scholarship players?
I've got a list right here.
I think it's 9 scholarship
Yes,
players.
I think Malaska is your preferred walk on.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. Sorry,
No, you're good.
it's Wednesday. It's I don't
Hump day.
but you look at who OU has landed, whether it's Spencer Brown or Deion Burks or Sam Franklin, Jake Roberts, who is a really big get. They landed him a couple of days ago, a tight end out of Baylor. I think that's a huge get because tight end was going to be a massive area of concern heading into next season. But also Caden Woolard out of Miami, Ohio, whose production is as good as anybody that's in the portal. Like 42 tackles, like 9 sacks, almost 13 tackles for loss. How do you feel about how OU has done in the portal so far? Who are a couple of the names that really stand out to you? And is there another move to be made? Is there still an area that they need to shore up? What do you see there?
Yeah, I think to this point, Oklahoma's done an excellent job addressing needs in the portal, which is, that's at this point in Venable's time at Oklahoma. I think that's what you really need is to address needs, not necessarily uh, addition, just adding guys for the sake of adding them to the roster, which, we did see some of that in the first 2 cycles. So the one of the guys that I really like is, you just said it, Caden Woolard is a guy that I think brings a lot of energy, adds another guy that you rotate in there on the defensive line. He's 6'5", 252, I believe is what he's listed at. And he's got great length. This is someone that I believe has an opportunity to maybe add a couple of pounds and be a really strong edge guy for them. He's not a 1-to-1 replacement of what they had in Rondell Bothroyd, just considering how much experience Bothroyd had coming in. But I do think that Woolard is a big get for the Sooners. Somebody else that's kind of flying under the radar, and you just mentioned it, tight end being a position of need. I really like Bauer Sharp. I really like. I think that's somebody that's going to turn some heads and really surprise some folks next fall. He's an athletic specimen. I mean, this is a guy that was recruited out of high school as a quarterback, and he made the transition over to tight end. Guys, some of the film on him, some of his best games, he can move. I mean, he's 6'4", 250. He can move at that size, and I think that at the very least, it gives Oklahoma some real depth there. Hopefully, you get a little healthier in that room too. I know Caden Helms is still trying to make his way back onto the field, and then you've got Devon Mitchell coming in. There's some guys in there that I think have some real promise, and I like those 2 guys. As far as moves still to happen or some things that Oklahoma still needs to address, I really don't feel like you can have too many offensive linemen right now,
I
considering
agree.
the
I agree.
situation that Oklahoma is coming into the year with. They're they just lost a lot. They lost a lot of experience, and if nothing else, the amount of snaps that Oklahoma lost, talent aside, the amount of snaps that Oklahoma lost after 2023 is just massive. I don't even know what the combined snaps are. I do know, just did the review of that position group. I mean, you had several guys with 700-800 snaps that are gone. So it's tough. And I think that Oklahoma is going to have to figure out some more pieces there just to have a good rotation, because even if you're starting five, you feel pretty good about, especially heading into a league that's as physical as the SEC, you need to have seven, eight, nine guys that you feel good about putting out there on the field. And right now, I know that they don't have that many. So
Right.
you need some more depth there. And then I don't know that it's going to happen this cycle, maybe in the spring, but I still think Oklahoma could use one more interior defensive lineman. Don't know what that looks like, but again, in the trenches, you can't have too many of those guys.
No, I agree. And I think the thing that's interesting is, Brent Venables said more than once before the bowl game that they were looking to take about 10 scholarship players through the portal.
Mm-hmm.
OU's got 9, which not theoretically, mathematically, some of the Kali words, it's a Kali word. God,
Slap that on a t-shirt.
No, nobody's that dumb to either say or wear something like that. But this is interesting because I think a lot of people know kind of who OU is still sort of in the mix for, whether that's Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon, whether that's Hurd from LSU, whether that's maybe a certain quarterback with some OU ties that went to South Moore, Casey Thompson. So we'll see. We don't know. There's a lot of stuff that can happen, but it's interesting because I think OU's not going to get all those guys. It's just it's unlikely that they're going to land all those guys. But I think Brent Venables had a pretty good idea of who they were going to land heading into the transfer portal season, and they still have another scholarship open. It would be interesting to see what else they could finagle. But if you're, I don't know, if OU doesn't make another move, if they don't land anybody else, at least in this cycle, how happy should fans be about what OU's got right now through the portal?
I think pretty good. I know that at least another one's coming, and I kind of am adding that in. But I look at what they
Head to OUinsider.com. Head to OUinsider.com.
I know that they have they've addressed needs. They have some spots that they needed to fill, and like Fabechi Nwewu is a guy that I think you can plug and play at guard. I think that he's going to need some technical work from Bill Bedenbaugh, but who else would you want offering you or helping you out there? Again, there's pieces there that Oklahoma is going to need, and you also have a really good influx of young talent coming in as well. So I think you've addressed needs. They're not overly reliant on those guys being everything that they are hoping them to be outside of maybe the offensive line. If you can have those other guys just become role players. I mean, if Dejon Malone, the corner out of San Diego State, if he becomes a role player, I mean, Oklahoma's secondary looks even better going into next year, and that's with Woody Washington coming back and Gentry Williams hopefully being healthy, and Kendall Dolby being on the field. I mean, you've got pieces there, but I think Oklahoma has addressed depth issues, and I think you should be happy about that if you're an Oklahoma fan.
No, I agree, and I think this was also interesting because not only the amount of spots that were available, like OU had to overhaul their roster the last 2 years through the portal. They didn't really have to do that this year, at least not to that degree. Also, they didn't have as many spots. They don't have as many scholarships as they've had the last couple of years for transfer portal guys. So this was never going to be like a landing 15 to 20 guys like they did the last 2 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think overall, but I think what you're banking on is you're trying to add obviously some pieces to the portal, but I think what you're banking on is some of the younger guys who will be like, in their second or third year next season. You mentioned Gentry Williams or R. Mason Thomas.
You muted.
Oh,
after R. Mason Thomas.
There's this button and it's so easy to press. This has not been my best day. This has been like a 6 out of 10 for me so far.
You know what? That's part of the Oklahoma drill. I mean, it's not always your best day. You win some, you lose some.
It's the grind,
You're doing great.
you know. Hey, and that's why this is where our competitive depth shows up. My
Right.
mic went muted, and you step up, and that's what we got
I
here.
got you.
I mean, R. Mason Thomas, Robert Spears Jennings, Peyton Bowen, PJ Eddie Bauer. I think you're looking at guys like that to really take a. Do you want to try to say it?
No.
Do you want to try to say his name?
Adibarra.
That's so close. You're
fine.
so close.
I'm happy with that attempt.
We'll work. We'll work on it. I think that's really what you're banking on is internal development. I think you're not. I mean, you want to get the best guys you can through the portal, but I think as far as building something sustainable and really seeing growth, I think you're banking on internal development, and I think there's a lot of reasons to believe that we're going to see that. But you're right. I think offensive line is still probably the position group for me. I feel pretty good to really good about everything else. I think offensive line is still the thing I'm a little nervous about.
Yeah. I think regardless of what some of the fan base says or maybe how they feel about Coach Beatonbow, I don't think I would want another coach with the issues that he has on his, with his position group. I don't think I would want another coach on the roster having that to deal with, because if there's anybody that's going to mix and match and move parts around and get the right group out there, it's him. And we've seen him put offensive lines together when we thought it was going to be an issue going into the season in the past, and they turn out being just fine. It's funny, the Texas game every year, the OU Texas game seems to be like the turning point where, like, these five guys haven't really played that much together. They're still meshing, and then all of a sudden it's like it clicks in that game. I think that's probably safe to expect. Now, is the ceiling going to be as high as, what we saw maybe a few years ago? No, it's not. But there were certainly some issues with this last group, and they found a way to become not just serviceable but good at times for Oklahoma in the second half of the season. So you've got a lot of new names. The good news is you've got a new offensive coordinator as well, so they're going to be learning new stuff as it is. I think that it's going to be just fine. Everybody's kind of on the same page, and you've got some experienced guys that learn most of the principles they're going to be learning. But I think that you've got plenty of stuff to work with, and let's not discredit the people the players that were already on the roster there. Jake Sexton's a guy that is going to be good, and Troy Everett, I believe, if he plays at center, is more than serviceable there. Somebody that had over 100 snaps at the position this year. So, there's things to work on, certainly, but I do like the group that's there. It just would help to have some more players there if they can get them.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you about everything you said about Beatonbow. I think it's more, we just saw who won the national championship. That's Michigan, and they won it behind having probably the best offensive and defensive lines in the country. That's just, it's really, I mean, at some point you just need talent. You need as much talent as you can get. It really, we've said it a million times. You can have the best skill position players. You can have the best secondary and linebackers in the world, but if you're getting beat up at the line of scrimmage on either side of the ball, you're probably not winning anything that's significant. I mean, you're just not. That's really where everything starts and ends. College football is a very complicated game, but also sometimes it's very simple. It always starts up front. But Brian, I mean, we'll see. I think there's still a lot of stuff that could happen in the next few days, whether it's Zach Alley's hire becoming official, whether that's OU, as you hinted, maybe getting another guy or two in the portal. I think either way, while there's a lot of issues with college football right now, and the transfer portal has changed things so much, it's also made it to where there's more stuff going on this time of year than there usually is.
Yeah,
more fun to talk about too.
I think every episode that we have, we're going to have the words, some stuff has happened since the last time we talked. And I think that will continue to be the case.
I bet listeners have already noticed, and I bet if they're drinkers, maybe they take a shot every time they hear me hear me say that. But
Esquire.
Esquire, yeah. fanatics, enthusiasts. Yeah. Hey, I'm just trying to look out for the people who's looking to have a good time.
Hey,
That's all I'm trying
well,
to
you
do.
just helped them out again. Esquire. I'll say it again. There you go. There's your third one.
There's the episode of How I Met Your Mother where Robin is
Yes.
every time she says "but,"
Yes.
they take a drink, but then she starts doing it on purpose, and everybody, yeah, that's funny.
Right. Yeah, that's good.
Oh man. Well, tune in next week to see what other catchphrases and buzzwords we say here if you're looking to have a good time. In the meantime, Brian, I think that's going to do it for us here on the Oklahoma Drill. Again, a podcast fueled by OU Insider and the Rivals Network. You can check out a new episode from us every single Thursday on the OU Insider YouTube channel or anywhere you get your podcasts. If you haven't headed over to ouinsider.com to become a VIP member, you definitely should. There's still so much stuff going on right now behind the scenes in football, basketball. It's conference play, big time of year. Softball starts in less than a month, which is crazy. Softball starts in less than a month. OU's trying to win its fourth straight national championship. Plenty of stuff going on right now. You don't want to miss it. Head over to ouinsider.com or make sure to like and subscribe the OU Insider YouTube channel. We'll see what happens in the next few days, but regardless, we'll have you covered next week on the Oklahoma Drill.